When I first started doing this kind of no zombies approach, it was with a team that ended up winning, the Chinese women's volleyball team that ended up winning a gold medal. And so that immediately lent a little bit of credibility to this idea. Like, I'm not going to ruin a team by introducing these kind of fun, more dynamic, stimulating approaches to warm up.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Trust Driven Insights podcast. I'm your host, as always, Dr. Josh Satterley, and it's my pleasure today to be joined by Rett Larson, one of the most amazing strength coaches I've ever witnessed in my life. Rett, welcome to the show, as they say.
Wow, and what a welcome it is. That is high praise coming from you. You have access and you've seen a lot of strength coaches. So that flattery works really well on me. I feel great right now.
That's good. Yeah. One thing I've learned is it doesn't matter what level you're at or internationally, kissing ass always works. Always. Right. But one of the reasons I say that you're one of the best is you take a very novel approach to everything you do, but especially I would say around warm-ups. And I would say that in general, warm-ups are the area that everybody has signed off on. They only do what, either they did in high school or what the coach that trained them did. People will vary their programming a lot or like argue the, Wendler 5x5 versus the simple strengths, but I have rarely seen ever an argument about what warm-up should we do or what should be our intent. And so I think that stuck out to me, but it was like an insight to all the other crazy stuff you do, Rett also does most of his shopping for training equipment, either through our friends that Perform Better or at the dollar store, which, like two things. But Rett, can you give everybody listening a little sense of like what you do and like what I won't say day to day, your year to year kind of role is?
Yeah, I am a strength and conditioning coach, and I have for the last decade have been working primarily overseas, and that's with China, the Netherlands, and now Germany. And it's been for the last decade specifically with women's volleyball. It's the big overview of it. But when, the way that I'd say my practice has evolved is what you alluded to, which is that I have noticed that one of the most underserved parts of the training that strength and conditioning coaches do is in warm up. Whereas it's real easy to get around a table at happy hour and lament with other coaches how little time you have with your athletes, yet they seem pretty okay with just running the same 3 to 5 warm-ups with their kind of limited library of warm-up stuff where you're just skipping and crawling and doing these same kind of karaoke acceleration movements and things like that. Whereas I had a mindset shift 10 years ago where I said, if I really want to move the needle with my team, my warm-up needs to be reactive. My warm-up and my training in general, but my warm-up needs to be reactive to the needs of my team at that time. So if it's preseason, if it's the early season and my team is just weak, then I should make my warm-up look like mini strength training sessions. We should be microdosing strength until shoulders feel more robust and bulletproof, till low back pain maybe goes away. If we are a slow team, then my warm-ups can look more like speed sessions where we are doing all the hamstring and calf prep before we are racing each other. And there are stakes and the coaches are watching which player at which position is the fastest. And if we are banged up, then it should look like rehab. I should be asking my physical therapist, hey, what are your favorite rehab exercises for the nagging plantar fasciitis or whatever it is that they're seeing in the treatment room that night. And that's where it kind of came from. I said, well, I'm just going to scrap all the traditional stuff in my warm-up library. Instead, all I have to do is get muscle tissue warm. So why don't I use that time better to be working on whatever my team needs? And just as a result, it also was never monotonous. The athletes never knew what they were going to get. It was right. It's going to be a different kind of speed session, or it's going to be something bulletproofing them, or it's going to be an agility session, but it was never boring. And that's where this idea of having a warm-up where athletes can't, in effect, sleepwalk through it like zombies. That's where that came from. And I ran with this idea of no zombies. And it's now part of it's kind of an overarching philosophy. And that is now become something where Everyone knows me from, everyone knows me. Boy, what a pompous thing to say. But I've become more well known for the fun
Yeah.
things that we do. Because when everything's going okay, when I'm not getting any input from my head coach that we need to work on this, so the physios aren't telling me, then I can either work on what I think is important. Maybe I get ready for some weight training that we're going to be doing in the weight room. I can start
Yeah.
improving those patterns, or maybe we just have some fun. I just need to get your muscle tissues warm. So
Yeah.
more and more, as I've learned more and more about volleyball, I will just take a hold of the game of volleyball, and maybe I steal a drill that I saw my head coach using 3 days ago and I add bunch of boards to it. Maybe I take a drill that they were doing and I make them do it all with their opposite hand. And I just use that warm up time to expand their movement library, where I give them almost these kind of like volleyball challenges that they have to try to master in the 8-10 minutes that we have to just get their body temperature up. Instead of the traditional stuff, you'll see us playing kind of volleyball adjacent games. If you prescribe to like differential learning approach to training, more of an logical approach, which thank goodness is giving me some big fancy names for what is essentially just trying to expand their movement libraries, try to make them better movers, better at solving problems that they'll see on a volleyball court. That even if I design a volleyball game to warm them up that involves having to kick one of your passes on your side of the net, well, we might get better at kicking a volleyball, which actually happens in volleyball sometimes. Certainly your teammate will get better at tracking down the terrible kick that you just put out there, and everyone's warm. And if I can make it competitive and fun, all the better. So that's a long-winded explanation for kind of where this has come from. And it's designed to be an approach that, if done well, I'm making everybody happy. The athletes are happy with those games. They're building a bigger library. My head coach is happy because we're getting better at volleyball, maybe specifically the stuff he's been working on. My physical therapists like us, like what we're doing. So that's where it came from.
Nice. Yeah. I want to make sure everybody knows too, when you say you're working like with women's volleyball, these are typically national or Olympic level teams, right? You are not their first strength coach. They've had a whole line, right? And they're coming in, let's say, great shape. I think in that world, you're not taking gravel and trying to make emeralds. Like, you're literally polishing diamonds and taking them. And so there's not my son's in high school football right now. And so there's this push for like some of the smaller players. You're like, man, I hope that kid grows, or I hope he puts on some muscle, because, he's just one of the smallest kids out there and doing it for protection more than anything else, And so you're not running into that aspect. But to that point, we're talking about building trust here. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is these women are at the top of their game, like legitimately in their country. There is not a better volleyball player that you have met, right? And therefore they've had not just some coaches, but they've had probably some of the best coaches. They might have been coached by an incredible collegiate coach. They might have been in the junior national program. And so they come to your team and you do non-traditional stuff. That's Latin for weird shit. Okay. So how do you, when you get a new player in that maybe hasn't seen the way you do things and maybe doesn't trust you, what are some ways that you introduce them into this different, novel, new, weird, different, and the thing is with warm-ups, it's not like, oh, I know you did karaoke, but we do ladders. Like, you're on their feet doing something. You're like, this is way different. How does that go when you have a new player, and what are some tricks to building that trusted relationship with that player?
It hasn't always been smooth. For the most part, thank goodness it has been. Most players.
Everybody listening has had a life of no struggle at all. So, every patient interaction goes perfectly.
but yeah, it is, I'm fortunate that when I decided to adopt this philosophy, it was after many years with, big, great companies like Exos, with Athlete Performance, and then Exos got this great foundation. And when you're thinking about what I do, remember that I kind of built off of a foundation that was much more mainstream. I was in that Exos Velocity Sports Performance system for also a decade, learning. We're learning all those rules before I decided the most effective way to break them. And luckily, when I broke those rules, when I first started doing this kind of no zombies approach, it was with a team that ended up winning, the Chinese women's volleyball team that ended up winning a gold medal. And so that immediately lent a little bit of credibility to this idea. Like, I'm not going to ruin a team by introducing these kind of fun, more dynamic, stimulating approaches to warm up.
Yeah.
I'm really, really thinking about keeping everyone neurally activated and happy and excited and competitive in warm up. Like,
Right.
my warm ups are generally very competitive when I can make them so. Getting success at that level and success in the Netherlands right now, Team Germany is one of the top 8 in the world, top 8 to 10 in the world. And so we're doing this. So that has helped, of course, but that's still skating your question a little bit, that when you first start, there's going to be some pushback. And as I alluded a little bit, when it comes to like the coaching staff, the way that you get the buy-in is by solving their problems first. Before the athlete, before I'm rolling out the hacky sacks for the athletes, before they get to see a frisbee or a balloon, the head coach will have seen me turn my warm-up into mini volleyball sessions that are doing his favorite drills that he was pulling his hair out about 2 days ago in practice.
So you might ask the head coach, what do you need? And let's just say for the sake of argument, we don't know all the technical stuff, but let's just say they're having trouble with being aggressive at the net. So jumping at the net.
Right.
And so you will create a game, an interesting competition, but it will certainly involve, look like, serve, jumping aggressively at the net.
Absolutely. I would have he'd be doing maybe an aggressive blocking drill. I would substitute the next morning. I would substitute his volleyballs for medicine balls to make them really push harder and feel more impact. Would be raising the net maybe a couple of inches, maybe lowering it a couple inches. Like, I am just gonna manipulate, constrain some of these parts of his drill.
Right.
Put weight vests on them or bungee cords. Maybe I assist them into the movement or resist them. Maybe they have to do it blindfolded, Josh. I don't care, but he's going to see that I'm looking to solve this problem with him, that I am a part of his solution. And that is what he'll see first before he sees a lot of crazy.
So although you could solve his desires, you'd be like, oh, we could, let's just say, you're in Southern California, you go, oh, we could do it on the sand at the beach and create the same outcome. You want to give him back what he asked for. So even though that would solve it, you're like, that doesn't look anything like what he asked for, although the end result would be the same. We're going to do it close enough to what you want.
Exactly. Like, I'm still looking to get the exact outcome he's looking for, and more, just from an S&C slant, a more gamified slant, something, I have a whole night to think about how I can take his frustration and turn it into my drill next day. And ditto the physio, so I'm looking to solve their problem. So if I'm doing my job well, they see all of that. And that's the stuff that they're buying me a beer, because of that night. And after a couple weeks of that, that's when I can work in, hey, we're going to do something tomorrow that looks a lot like tag. It looks a lot like tag's even a bad example because I feel like that's a fantastic agility drill that everyone should do. But it's something that's even more abstract that we are going to.
So you're pulling out pool noodles and balloons, and people are like, what's going on here? This is weird.
Crazy stuff, right? And that's just about creating better athletes, putting a smile on their face. And hockey with pool noodles and ping pong balls, all that, it gets into play because maybe we do that for 5 minutes and the girls are sweaty and smiling. And then head coach sees me putting him into an isometric, a handstand against the wall, holding it for 30 seconds. He understands, they're grimacing now, they're grunting, they're not happy. Then I put them down into a split squat that makes my physio happy. And we take those pool noodles and see which duo can bat the ping pong ball back and forth between their pool noodles the most time in a minute, or
while sustaining the isometric split squat.
The isometric,
I love it.
right? And so these things are what I'm narrating to the head coach that we are getting. The warm-up should be tougher as well as more fun. And that's the spot. If they're smiling, sweaty, I'm getting high fives from head coaches, high fives from physio. That's the Venn diagram where everything is great.
Imagine a practice where patient engagement is seamless and unified. With trust-driven care, connect with patients across text, email, social media, and Google Business Chat, all on autopilot. Empower your team to step in effortlessly and engage in real time from anywhere. Say goodbye to multiple software and hello to a simplified practice and life. Trust-driven care is the all-in-one solution to save time, boost revenue, and build patient loyalty. Book your demo today and watch your schedule start to fill up. Now, back to the show.
There's so many ways, the Venn diagram in my picture here, or my conversation. Number one, for those listening who might not know, when Rett says S&C, that's typically referring to strength and conditioning, which is the same as training, which is the same as fitness. Just, I don't want there to be any hang up on like these technical terms. Yeah. But with this, one thing that I think you taught me, and you taught me in a way that I was like, oh my God, like, when you realize you haven't been doing something is, the 3 goals of a warm up basically are increase the temperature, hence the name warm up, right? Get ready for whatever you're going to do that day. So if you're going to the gym and you're doing heavy back squats, like how could you prepare for that? Oh, we should work on core stability, spine organization, like hip flexibility. Okay, all those are great things. And then the third thing is neurologically stimulate or prep that athlete. And you think about like my son in high school football right now. What is he doing before practice? Well, he's sitting for 8 hours in an uncomfortable chair doing nothing, and maybe his head's bent forward staring at a phone. And so neurologically, he's not really ready for full field, and he's a lineman, so he's doing a lot of lateral movement, pushing. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't been stimulating nervous systems at all. You look at volleyball, for example, let's just take one tiny little, tons of ocular motor tracking, right? Tons of it. Has anybody ever addressed that? Tons of cervical movement, tons of like getting down on the ground into like it's not a squat, but more like a transitioning from like deadlift to like a hip hinge to like a knees forward kind of, I don't know what you call it, that anterior knee loading they do. Are we getting them ready for that? And does that happen through a ladder drill where the body's almost totally straight, right? That's really ankle centric. There's no hip range of motion. You're not getting into spine organization and all that stuff. And people are like, oh yeah, that prepped neurologically for this game, for this workout. And you're like, no, like it didn't. And that's not even saying the upper body, right? Volleyball players are, like you made a point the other day, almost all the power in volleyball happens with straight arms. And I was like, that's crazy. You never think about that. Whereas in pitching, 3/4 of it, golf, 3/4 of it is bent arm, and maybe you straighten at the end. And so focusing on the neurological system, and if you want to do that, our neurological systems are incredible at homeostasis. They fight for it, right? And so if given the chance, they will stay homeostatic or find the most boring and efficient way to complete something, which is now on this big picture is a threat to prepping that athlete for practice or play at the highest levels. And, you were the first person really, and I just think like pool noodles and ping pong balls and stuff, it's so different. You have no choice but to feel to receive neurological stimulation.
And with these modality, what you've tapped in on is the fact that with so much of this, we can play at 100% of what we're of speed. Like there's not a lot of risk in swinging pool noodles at each other and
right.
playing. So we can actually get the body trying to process things at 100% of speed. I worry. I think that early in my career, I was so concerned with having a huge library of regressions that my warm-ups, if you saw them, would be so much perfect crawling and neutral spine and dead bug and all of these.
Put a cone on the back so they stay ultra stable,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was so concerned, and everything was regressed to the point that a lot of that stuff stopped transferring. That a lot of that stuff wasn't great prep, might be really good foundational strength work, but not good in the precious time I have before training. And that if it's a risky to do, but early, in the last decade, I have slowly gotten rid of a lot of the traditional activation things that we were doing a lot of, and instead replaced it with with challenges that just reward athleticism and reward reaction time and reward speed. And of course, we're going to get the tissue warm in a safe environment where I have so many constraints on a game that they can't go fast enough to hurt themselves. Stretch it out, move through the ranges of motion that we need to play volleyball, take restrictor plates off, play that game at full speed. And that's a little bit more of a formula that I use now. And it probably looks, if I were the coach 20 years ago that, looking at this, I'd say, oh, this guy's just maybe a hack, and this guy doesn't, he's going to get all his athletes in.
Yeah, when he finally learns how to do a warm up.
Exactly. This guy, doesn't do all of the, he doesn't go through the required tissue, like soft tissue work. He's not, not doing that soft tissue as much. Like the athletes do that beforehand on their own, and I'm not spending nearly as much time stretching as I used to. We go through the most, like the 3, 4, 5 most bang for the buck stretches we can go do. And then we get right back out there before we cool down, and we move at game speed in whatever challenging kind of movement puzzle I've come up with them come up for them. And
I want to,
lo and behold, I'm going to knock wood a bunch of times, but it's not like I've seen injuries just skyrocket. There's been no correlation. There's the downside that I worried about has emerged.
and if you look at some of those teams that have been worked with, strength and conditioning specialists who are like very traditionally based, you will often see them take over a team and you'll see injuries go up. So even with all the knowledge, we're all still idiots, right? Like we can be.
Boy, I'm so far away from blaming anybody on injuries. I was really lucky in my career, like that I went many years and didn't have a big one. And then I had 1 year where we had 2, and they were they're like 2 of my strongest athletes that I would have the most bulletproof, crazy. And it's still a mystery that gets talked about, and we scratch our heads over all the time.
Yeah.
Then, now hopefully we go on another nice streak.
Yeah. To your point, I was taking care of one time of an electrician who was building a tower here. I live in Las Vegas, so he was building one of the huge strip hotels. And he said something to me that I think every strength and conditioning coach, he said, only 5 guys have died on that project. And OSHA said that 9 is acceptable. So we're doing good. And I was just like, oh my God, look, that's death, So when you're like, we had 2 injuries over 1, it's like, yeah, but that's acceptable. It just sucks when whatever's normal, the 2% is acceptable or something. It sucks when it's your 2%.
Yeah, absolutely. I have nothing but
yeah. One other thing. Well, I want to clarify for everybody listening too. I want to just remind, Brett is coaching at the highest levels of athletes who are typically very healthy, younger, and everything. So if you're running fitness programs for like 45-year-old weekend warriors, this is not a perfect equal sign here. Like modify, but I think principles still hold up. Should we neurologically engage them? Absolutely. Heck, those people are probably sitting more than your team, and so like we got to fight it even more. But you might want to limit the full speediveness, and full speed might be different in your world. And you typically are coaching in a very large, spacious, open area gymnasium. Whereas if I have a 1,500 square foot, CrossFit style gym, I might not be able to do all these things. So I just want people to realize that. Although I will say the principles hold up. Buy the ping pong balls and pool noodles.
It's a good caveat. And they say that just the difference between medicine and poison is dose. And that's similar.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I often roll out what I think is going to be a genius warm up to do on an early Tuesday morning, and immediately see that it is at way too high a level. And that means that I haven't constrained it enough, that I have put on challenge, and the girls are able to go way too hard, way too fast. And now it's risky, and I'm sweating. I'm not having a good time. And I then change the rules of the game. And I would do the same thing if I was working with elderly, Gen Pop, whatever.
Yeah.
Now, I realized as I was talking, I didn't go back to what you asked earlier, which is pushback. And I talked about how I get that with coaches, but I didn't talk about athletes.
Okay.
Nowadays, I think most of the athletes, at least ones that are on Instagram, which is most of them, know what they're getting when it comes to me. And so do the coaches that are on Instagram. I live my life pretty transparently. So if you hire me as a strength coach,
Instagram is your warning label.
That is
listen. They walk in. This is what we're doing.
That's my resume. That is definitely the warning that you get. This is don't hire me if you're not prepared for this. But before I was on Instagram, I've had high-level athletes join my team late. I can think of 2 examples of this, once in the Netherlands, once in Germany, where I had the 95% of my team working with me for almost a month, when a superstar came back late because they had gone further into the club season than anybody. And they came in and they're like, what? We're throwing Frisbees? Rett, all due respect, I've got my warm up that I like to do. And, you see, I have my mini band, my vibrating foam roller, and I am going to be doing this if that's good. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. You know your body more than I do. I would never take away the rituals that you use to go to war. And there's a great chance if you just jumped on mine, placebo effect or whatever it is, you might perform poorly. And that is not acceptable. I am here to serve the team. And at that point, I just continue what I'm doing with that athlete. Can go over on the sideline. You say, jump in, jump out whenever you want. And I just proceed to slowly and passive aggressively try to mount a campaign that makes them hate their warm up while they watch us having the time of our lives, getting sweaty, getting more, working on our offhand, our kick save, our chicken wing save, our, being able to juggle off your head, like all of these interesting things, and eventually drip enough influence that they come back into the fold, which thankfully happened for the most part in those cases.
And competitors want to compete too, right? So if it's like, I can't compete against myself on this foam roller, and I'm pretty sure I could beat Brett at the chicken wing head juggle challenge.
That's right.
All of a sudden they come over. Yeah. Well, I did want to cover this too, that I think you do so well, but are you familiar with, if I said in medicine, the BSP approach?
No.
Okay. So what we learned is we thought, like, if you have a knee injury, as soon as I take care of the ligaments and the tissue, the tendons and the muscles, it goes away. But it turns out your hesitancy of going downstairs when you're injured makes it hard to rehab you because you're scared, right? So BSP just stands for bio, psycho, and social, meaning we have to address all three to truly rehab you, right? And our mutual friend, Greg Day, amazing at this, getting rehab to not be only something lives in the gym, but rather something that challenge yourself at home, challenge yourself at, social events. And in the world of sports, there is this huge BSP component, right? You could have two of the best players in the world. Like, we see this all the time on these super teams. Like, I'm up from LA, the LA Lakers, when we had Shaq and Kobe and Karl Malone and everybody, and we didn't win a ring, right? It ain't talent problem. Like, it's something else. It's the other pieces. But to your point about warm-ups, one of the things that I know can happen in these high-level teams is you might be coaching a team which is the first time that multiple of those players have been on the same team. They've often banged it out against each other, right? And I've heard this over and over again of one of the challenges of, like, developing a great Olympic team or a relay team in swimming or something is you have to take people that they've spent a lot of their life hating each other. Like, that's the person who took it from me, or that I'm going to take them down. And now it's like, no, we're fighting for the same goal. And in that, if you do these low-level warm-ups, like, let's say, ladder drills, the hatred can still, like, have place because I'm not getting distracted enough from it. And I remember, this will sound really weird, but the actor Paul Newman, I heard he lost his son committed suicide, and he was totally rotten, and he loved car racing. And he told his coach for race cars, put me in the car because it's the only time I'm not thinking about my son. Like, it's so consuming and there's so much coming at you, and you got to hit the turn at this point and shift right here and hit the RPMs, that you can't reserve that little space for woe is me. And I think about, in your case, those girls, those women who are on these teams can't carry that grudge because they're focused so much on which way the ping pong ball is going and how their left hand sucks at hitting it, but they got to do that, and they're being distracted, and then we're also 2 points behind, and that other team looks like they're making an advance, and all of a sudden it's like the only 10 minutes where they haven't thought about, their number one rival. It's the only 30 minutes where they just let everything go and don't care about where they're standing, where you guys are standing in the challenges, right? Like, it's the only pure moment they might have of almost like physical meditation. And I just want, I want to commend you on creating that. Even if they get 10 minutes of that 3 times a week, they're under so much damn pressure everywhere else. Like, you're giving them a little bit of reset, a little bit of insight. And I never seen another coach who does that. But the other part is, can you talk about, like, how much you've seen that change these teams? Because there are inherent challenges of getting the best Germans to play together. Right?
Yeah. This is I've never been asked this before. And it is so true that if I remember reading a book where they talked about in the best symphonies in the world, in the Boston Pops or whatever, it very often, the first saxophone and the second saxophone are not friends. that is a competitive relationship.
Right.
It is that competitive relationship that keeps pushing the other one higher to not win first chair or to not.
Yeah. The hatred has made them both better.
Makes them both better.
That doesn't mean that they want to play together. Yeah.
Incredible music together. And certainly on the teams I've been on, I am well aware that within positions, there is a lot of rivalry, and there are frenemies left and right on these teams. And the thing about it, Josh, and I appreciate the compliment. I spend a lot of time trying to think about the social dynamics and how I can use those levers of gamification to drive intent, like in the weight room. You were mentioning, how you can get out of your head of it when we're running it in warm-ups with the games, and that is absolutely true. But I'm also thinking of how I can manipulate teams in the weight room. Like, so if we're going to do a squat jump contest on the jump mat, who can jump a 40-kilo bar the highest, then there's power in me putting certain girls together in teams of 2 and 3 to compete against other teams of 2 and 3 so that they are cheering for each other, so we can maybe stave off some real bad blood that crops up. And also to, the highest jumper in that group is probably going to be my worst jumper. The second highest is going to be with the worst. And I'm going to have to do that. But it's also a way that I make the, maybe some of the jumpers that aren't great a winner for a day. And I'm always thinking
positionally, like you're swapping in the best blocker or the best hitter setter may not be the best squat jumper. So
100%.
Some humility.
I'm trying to create a weight room environment, like a culture in the weight room where everyone associates it with a place where they achieve stuff. That it's not just Samantha, who was born to 2 NBA player parents and has been able to jump 32 inches since she was born. Like, it's not her winning every event. If I'm doing my job well, then like everyone in my group has a chance to be the winner one day. Just last week, we did a balance challenge where I put accelerometers on their hips that are really finely tuned, and everyone had to hover their foot on top of a box for 30 seconds to see who had the best single leg balance. Now, that's a throwaway exercise, right? That is just something I threw into our normal, everyday, grinding weightlifting session, but it was an intense competition that resulted in, a bunch of girls being on the leaderboard, at the top of the leaderboard, that had never won anything before. And I got to crown them the queens that day at practice. I always announce who won the things in the weight room and at practice, so that there's stakes, so that these athletes know the head coach will learn that I just ran the fastest on the treadmill today, or I just was part of a team that had the highest vertical jumps or jumps. I'm always aware of the social dynamic when I'm creating games for my athletes or competitions for my athletes in the weight room and out in warm-up.
You've mentioned this twice. You gamify and create a competitive environment. Would you recommend that every day in either the warm-up or the weight room that there's a winner?
I don't know if
if you're saying go away with this principle, like, would you say that there's always a winner in one of those or both of them?
Like anybody, I don't like an always or never. So
the most scientific answer to any question is it depends.
I hate saying it depends too, but more often than not, if I have enough, you don't want it to deaden. So for instance, I've been this season, I've really put a lot of emphasis on how fast we can sprint on a curved treadmill. I think the single leg quick force that is necessary to run at top speed on a treadmill for 5 seconds only. Like, if I just put the clock on, you have 5 seconds to get up to the highest top speed you can, and we're going to record that and track that over time. Well, if we're just playing that one game, that's going to get old, and they're going to stop being motivated for it after a while. So I will cycle in and out of almost every little competition. But I do believe in trying to make the weight room as competitive. That is just one of the easiest levers for elite athletes. And it might not in general pop. For instance, I personally am absolutely not a competitive person. I have never been. I'm the best loser you've ever met. I'm more competitive when my athletes are out on the floor. Of course, then I get crazy. But personally, no big deal. I'm not motivated that way. So it might not work general pop, but it certainly is a lever that I am pulling on.
Well, I mean, I have implemented some of your warm-ups that you gave me in general pop, and I've never had anybody that was like they often say that was different. That was, but they've never said didn't like it. And especially pairing people up, I'm trying to think like a stick drill where I'm using a stick to do like single leg RDLs, no weight, but single leg RDLs. And then my partner is, staying one leg balance or something and things like that. And then amass how many points you can do, or, your partner can only move when your foot's off the ground. Like stuff like that is definitely engaging of the general pop. And as I think about it, like I think it would be enhanced by having more competition, but there may be a limit.
But there's other levers. That's the one I've mentioned a couple of times. But we're also big on the kind of achievement lever, like that feeling of having leveled up, accomplished something.
Yeah.
We've gotten heavily into the rope flow, for instance. You know what I'm talking about? Where instead of jumping a rope, you take a jump rope and you're manipulating it all around your body in infinite patterns that are moving northeast, west, south, that are really working kind of this spinal engine. It's really a ton of rotational movement that we don't tap into in the weight room or warm up as often. But more importantly, all of these movements are almost like dance moves where you have to practice it a bunch of times before you nail it. The rope keeps smacking you in the face. The rope keeps, wrapping around you. And the girls are clicking in and shouting when they get it, and they are figured out kind of a complex pattern. They don't even realize that they're putting their shoulder through a great range of motion to get them ready for volleyball. Their shoulders are burning. Their spine is twisting all over the place. Girls are feeling better, but they only know that they've unlocked a new trick with this. And so that achievements button is also something that that's a lever we're pulling for gamification to try to keep everyone engaged and stimulated. Also, we put ropes in the weight room all the time. So
it's funny. Like I can remember going to my first Perform Better, and I can't even remember his name now, but he was the guy that talked about Indian clubs. And the first time I saw him, I was like, this idiot. I mean, come on, like, what are you doing here, man? Bowling pins? What are those, And it's one of those things where you're like, 5-10 years later, when you're like, I'll try it for a while, you're like, oh my God. Yeah. And I've heard the same thing about these ropes. I've never tried them, but like I've seen them. Yeah. And I only hear good things. And like even jump rope, very simple thing, but I think is fantastic because as Gray Cook says, it's a self-correcting exercise.
That's the self-policing,
Yeah. I whip the hell out of your calf and you're like, well, next time I'll jump.
Exactly. But the rope is wonderful. Like you can't bully it. Like it's going, you got to get out of its way if you're doing it right.
Before we wrap this up, I want to talk about one more aspect that I think you kind of have done such a great job. There's so many paths I want to go down with you, Rhett. God, you're good.
I appreciate it.
But the one I want to talk about is you're dealing with the highest level athletes and you have these social pressures, right? Like the eyes on you to make them perform are very tight, right? Like you don't have a lot of leeway if you're coaching a local high school. There's high expectations on you. There's high expectations on them. There's high expectations on the coaches. And along with that, like when you're coaching the Chinese national team, there's a language barrier, huge language barrier. And not just language. Language is one of the issues. There's a customs and the way you act barrier. Like you may not realize you're eroding a relationship by just wearing a hat or something, Right.
In China, green hats, can't wear them. No kidding.
Just any hat in the color green.
Green hat, nope. It means you are unfaithful. You cheat on your husband, wife. You're not someone to be trusted. Just as an aside, you said I had to put it in there for anyone over to China. No green hats.
Yeah, interesting. Yep. And there's these little things that can either build up a relationship or reduce them. And you've coached the Germany team. I don't know how many of them spoke English. The Netherlands, I don't know how many of them spoke English. China, don't know how many of them spoke English. And what advice would you have for, let's say it's a clinician listening to this and they're treating an athlete who's injured, but there's a language barrier. Maybe it's Spanish to English, Chinese to, forgive me, what's the Chinese language? Mandarin to English or something. How have you found kind of internationally works to build a trusted relationship in the first few weeks?
I found that, especially being in China, that just being vulnerable as I can be is the way to go. And especially if knowing that I'm going to ask them to fail so often in warm up. I am going to put a frisbee in their hand for the first time. And if they're good at frisbee, and I had no idea that everyone in elementary school in China throws a frisbee every single day, they're going to have to do it with their opposite hand. Like, I'm going to find the thing that they suck at so that they have to fail, stumble, because stumbling and failing gets them into the positions that I find them in volleyball. If my athletes were good at hacky sack or any pool noodles or anything, the frisbees, they're not going to be failing enough for it to be actually applicable to volleyball. So I'm going to make them fail. And so me, for instance, trying to learn the language in the case of China and trying to use the language and failing at that, showing that vulnerability. Everyone knows that, or not everyone, but a lot of people know that I will incorporate dancing into the occasional warm up. It's still what we do on game days in the mornings in our hotel to wake ourselves up. If we have an afternoon game, we'll schedule out a conference room for 15 minutes to do 3 dances where we're just watching the Just Dance Nintendo game on a screen and trying to copy those movements. I am up front and center, being the worst dancer in that group, to try to show enough vulnerability that even though I can't make the jokes that I want to, I can't use the language that I want to be funny.
Yeah.
I am, because I still prefer to laugh all day long. I'm lucky, with the Dutch team and with the Germans, they all speak perfect English. So I can use language. But when it came to the Chinese, I still want to be able to be funny. And so I'm leaning on, basic stuff of just looking like an ass really was the way that I do it, that fits my personality to do it that way. I don't know how many how much physical comedy I did back in China. It'd be embarrassing to see a blooper reel of all the pretend times I pretended to be hitting the nuts or something to get a laugh out of these girls. Yeah. But it is, it's a reason that I think, we still get lots of hugs when I see them, like I did in Texas last week.
So if it works for humans who are 0 to 3 before they've developed language, it works internationally.
Yeah, your reptilian brain just smiled at the thought of getting nuts. Then that works for. I think it varies, and there's probably people that are better at answering the question than I am. But that's how I did it.
Awesome. Well, Brett, we're out of time for today. Unfortunately, I know that you have to go back to your secret underground laboratory and develop even more warm-ups with even crazier tools.
It's called like this Instagram rabbit hole where I'm just following these like 12 unknown South Korean handball coaches that are the craziest dudes you ever see. And I'm stealing everything from these people, and I'll never let people know where I'm getting the ideas.
I found this YouTube channel one time that was like the craziest PE coaches, and they were creating these great games. And then I lost the channel. I just like literally can't find it. And every time I search like PE coach, like it's horrible.
But
they were like
all of those.
The most gamified stuff I've ever seen in my life. No cost of equipment. And I'm like, these guys are geniuses.
It's great. I keep on, every time I go down a PE teacher rabbit hole, I'm like, do I need to buy those little scooter those little wheeled scooter things?
Yeah.
Should I? Like, they always make me think I need to be buying some of these little playground things that these teachers use all the time. And I do.
Well, with that, I hope everybody follows you. Give out your Instagram handle real quick so people can see your work.
Yeah, it's Rettasaurus, just Rettasaurus. And that, and I know that, what I've done in the last year for those coaches that are thinking, what do I do? I don't have all these games. I came out with a library at the beginning of the year where I took all of my ideas and I put them into this like Netflix style library.
Yeah.
Where if you have pool noodles, you can search for pool noodles, tennis balls. If you just want the ideas, you can search that way. It's exactly like Netflix where it'll bring up, I think I have.
How can they get access to this?
I'm one of those. So that you can find that if you go to the Instagram, it's in my bio. That's the easiest way. But also, I think there's links to it in my YouTube page, which you could also find on, if you search Rettasaurus or No Zombies. If you just No Zombies, Rettasaurus, that library, I would hope that would bring it up. And you could, you can see it there. And it's, it's been fun because I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it. And the nice thing is at this point, more and more people are sending me other great ideas. If they see that I've done a warm up using little short sticks that I found or mini tug of war things, I'll just get different ideas that I then subsequently add to the library. So it's growing, 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 and hopefully just gets better and better over time.
I love it. Rett, it's always a pleasure chatting with you, man. I'm really glad we were able to do this. And for those of you out there who work with people, I would say follow Rett's lead, even if you're not in strength and conditioning, and even if you're not in physical rehab. Like I get people back from low back pain and knee pain and shoulder pain, but even not that. I hear so many mental health professionals now adding like yoga, dance, art therapy to their practices as an adjunct. And I think it goes back to that, like how much neurostimulation can you create to flush out all the bad thoughts, And I don't think there's anybody on earth that's doing a better version of that in an easy to watch format than your Instagram. Like that is the model for full brain stimulation towards a goal. So I want to thank you for that, because you just took such a novel approach in it. You were the first guy that I really saw that was like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And actually, it shouldn't be that traditional way without being a jerk about it. There are those people in strength and conditioning, they offer classes with often like three-letter names, and they just harangue you for how dumb you are of doing things the way you've done them. But you never made anybody feel that way.
Well, yeah, I think I've learned out of my 52 years of life that there's always better ways. There's really interesting approaches. I lose to volleyball teams all the time that have strength and conditioning practices that I think would be silly and don't make any sense to me. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, and this one, thankfully, I've seen has lit some people up, that people really enjoy it and have endorse it and espouse it. So I'm thankful for that, and thankful for saying those kind words, man. I can't wait to clip that and put it on Instagram. Coming from you,
absolutely, man. Yeah, you deserve all the accolades. Well, with that, Rett, it's been a pleasure. And on behalf of Rett Larson, this is Josh Satterley saying, Rett, I was going to say this. I got to say this. There's a business consultant that says, if given the option of a great culture, amazing sales, or a great product, he said, culture eats everything else for lunch. And I think that's one thing you develop on your teams, just the engagement and the culture. And I'm so excited because when you have that dynamic, gamified, competitive culture, it has a way of screwing up the rankings as we get to the end.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I have my brain at this stage in my career spends much more time thinking about how I trick my athletes into giving me 100% all the time, even when I'm tired, and less time thinking about exercise selection and sets and reps and periodization scheme. And I think my athletes benefit from it.
And the coaches you're serving and the programs you're serving, the country you're serving. If it's Germany, like, I don't know where they're ranked nationally, but if they were like third or fourth, it's like, oh no, the board has been reset. I'm sorry, So
fun. We're about to go to the finals with the top 8 countries in the world, and mine's the only one that's going to be warming up before competition by throwing frisbees back and forth.
I love it.
Doing relay races with frisbees to add just a light dynamic of unpredictability, and everyone else is going to be circling up and stretching. So
yeah, I love it, Rett. And thank you so much for the time today. Everybody listening, check out Rett's Instagram. And with that, we're going to wrap this up. Thanks, Rett.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Trust Driven Insights, brought to you by Trust Driven Care. Imagine a world where all your patient communication is in one place, seamless, effortless, and on autopilot. That's the power of Trust Driven Care. If you're ready to streamline your practice, check out trustdrivencare.com and see what's possible. Trust Driven Insights, real conversations, smarter care, stronger business.